Ethan Miles worked as a janitor on Viral Station, a massive city of metal that floated between the stars. Every day he walked through long silver corridors carrying a mop and a repair kit, cleaning up after aliens who barely noticed him. Viral Station was home to hundreds of species, all busy trading, commanding fleets, or studying strange technologies. Humans were rare there, and most were workers like Ethan, quiet, overlooked, and unimportant. He didn't mind the work. It was steady, honest, and it gave him a small room to live in with his daughter, Lila. She was 7, curious and full of life. Every morning before he left for work, she would stand on the little bunk bed and say, "Don't forget to bring back a story, Daddy." Ethan always promised he would. The stories he told her were never about kings or heroes. They were about the strange creatures on the station, or the way the stars shimmered blue over the viewing domes. That day began like any other. Ethan had been assigned to clean Dock Bay 9, one of the restricted areas near the upper ring of the station. He wasn't supposed to bring his daughter along, but the small school in the lower decks had been closed for repairs. So he let her tag along, warning her to stay close and stay quiet. Lila held his hand as they stepped into the large docking bay. The place was almost empty except for a few engineers and guards. She looked around, wide-eyed, staring at the tall windows that showed the glowing storm outside. Viral Station orbited a gas giant, and the planet's violent lightning storms often lit up the darkness in waves of gold and blue. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Ethan smiled faintly. "Beautiful but dangerous. That's what keeps us safe. No one wants to fly through storms like that." He got to work repairing a broken air duct while Lila sat nearby, humming a tune and playing with a small maintenance drone that buzzed softly in the air. She giggled when it copied her movements. Ethan couldn't help but laugh with her, even though he knew that if his supervisor saw it, he'd probably get a warning. A voice crackled over the loudspeakers suddenly. "Attention all personnel. Royal vessel approaching. Prepare for docking." Ethan froze. Royal vessels meant high security, military presence, and strict silence. He quickly told Lila to stand still and not make a sound. Guards rushed in, lining up in formation. The large docking door opened slowly, and a blinding light filled the room as the royal ship descended. Its hull shimmered like liquid glass, marked with strange symbols that seemed to move and change. From the ship emerged tall figures in silver armor. And then the air shifted, everyone bowed. The Queen of Viral herself stepped out. She was taller than any human, with skin that glowed faintly like moonlight and eyes that shimmered in many colors at once. Her steps were slow and graceful, but her presence filled the entire room. Ethan quickly looked down, keeping his head bowed, but Lila didn't understand. She peeked up, curious, and her eyes met the Queen's. For a moment, everything seemed to stop. The Queen's steps faltered. Her eyes widened as she stared at the little girl. Ethan noticed too late. He grabbed Lila's shoulder and whispered, "Don't look." But before he could pull her away, the Queen spoke. Her voice was soft, almost fragile. "She looks like my daughter." No one moved. The guards exchanged uncertain glances, but no one dared to speak. The Queen slowly walked closer until she stood before Ethan and Lila. Ethan's hands shook. He didn't know what to say or do. He had never been this close to royalty before, let alone spoken to one. The Queen knelt down in front of Lila. Her expression was no longer proud or distant. It was full of pain. "What is your name, little one?" she asked gently. "Lila," the girl said, smiling. "What's yours?" A faint laugh escaped the Queen's lips, surprising everyone in the room. "It has been a long time since anyone asked me that. My name is not spoken often anymore." Ethan cleared his throat nervously. "Your Majesty, I'm sorry if she—" The Queen raised a hand, stopping him. "Do not apologize. She has done nothing wrong." She looked back at the child, her many-colored eyes softening. "You remind me of someone I lost long ago. My daughter was taken by the void storm. She would have been your age now." Lila tilted her head. "I'm sorry. You look sad." The Queen nodded slowly. I still am." For a long moment, silence filled the dock. Then the Queen stood, her regal calm returning. She looked at Ethan. "You are her father?" "Yes, Your Majesty," he said quickly. "Then you will bring her to me tomorrow," she said. "There is something I must understand." Ethan blinked, confused. "Your Majesty, I'm just a janitor." The Queen's tone softened again. "I do not care what you are. You will bring her." With that, she turned and walked back to her ship. The guards followed, and within minutes, the great vessel lifted off again, leaving behind only silence and confusion. Ethan stood frozen, holding Lila's hand. His heart raced. He didn't understand what had just happened. A queen had spoken to him, a human janitor. She had spoken to his daughter as if she were someone precious, someone remembered. Lila looked up at him. "Daddy, did I do something bad?" He shook his head quickly, forcing a smile. "No, sweetheart. You didn't do anything wrong." But inside he was afraid. The queen's voice had sounded gentle, but there was something in her eyes, a mixture of grief and hope that felt dangerous. He didn't know why she saw her lost child in his daughter, or what she meant by, "something I must understand." That night after his shift ended, Ethan couldn't sleep. The lights of the station flickered outside their small window, and the hum of the engines filled the silence. Lila slept peacefully beside him, clutching her worn-out stuffed toy. Ethan stared out at the stars, his mind turning over the day's events again and again. He had lived quietly for years, never drawing attention, never standing out. But now an alien queen knew his name. He didn't know it yet, but that moment, the queen's words, the look in her eyes, would change his and Lila's lives forever. The stars outside seemed to shimmer brighter that night, as if something unseen had awakened, watching them through the storm. The universe had noticed the janitor and his child, and it would never forget them again. The next day came slowly for Ethan. He barely slept, his mind heavy with worry. He had never met a royal before yesterday, and now the queen herself had asked to see his daughter again. Lila woke up cheerful as always, her hair messy and her eyes bright. She didn't seem scared at all. "Daddy, are we going to see the shiny lady again?" she asked. Ethan sighed and smiled weakly. "Yes, sweetheart. The queen wants to see you again. Remember to be polite, all right?" Lila nodded, though she didn't really understand what that meant. To her, the queen was just another person who looked sad. Ethan brushed her hair, made her the last bit of their ration breakfast, and held her small hand as they walked toward the royal section of the station. The guards at the entrance stared at them coldly but let them through after checking their names. The queen's chamber was nothing like the rest of Viral Station. While most areas were metal and gray, her hall shimmered with crystal walls and floating lights that moved like fireflies. The air smelled faintly of flowers Ethan had never seen before. At the center of the room stood the queen, tall and graceful, her long cloak trailing across the floor. When she turned toward them, her face softened instantly. "You came," she said quietly. "Good." Ethan bowed awkwardly, unsure what to do. "Yes, Your Majesty. You asked to see us." The queen looked at Lila, who was peeking curiously around the room. "And you, little one? You're not afraid?" Lila shook her head. "No. You don't look scary. You look lonely." The queen's lips curved slightly. "Lonely?" she repeated softly, as if testing the word. "Yes, perhaps I am." She gestured toward a small table made of glowing glass. "Sit with me. Both of you." They sat down, and a servant brought a tray of food, strange fruits and a warm drink that shimmered like sunlight. Lila's eyes lit up, and the queen nodded for her to eat. Ethan hesitated, unsure if it was allowed, but he didn't want to offend her. After a moment of silence, the queen spoke again, her voice calm but distant. "You remind me of a time long gone. My daughter, Elara, was full of life, curious, brave, and far too kind for the world she was born into." Lila looked up from her plate. "What happened to her?" The queen's eyes dimmed. "A storm took her. A void storm beyond the star gates. No ship ever returned from it. I sent an entire fleet to search, but all I found was silence." Ethan swallowed hard. He had read about the void storms in the station's data logs, vast waves of energy that devoured ships whole. To lose a child that way was beyond cruel. The queen's voice softened further. "When I saw your daughter yesterday, I thought I had lost my mind. Her eyes, her smile, her voice, all the same. For a moment, I believed the universe had given her back to me." Ethan shifted in his seat. "Your Majesty, I understand the pain of losing someone, but Lila is my daughter. She's just a child, not?" The queen raised her hand gently. "I know. She is human. But the heart is not bound by reason, Mr. Miles. When you lose a piece of yourself, even a shadow of what you lost can bring hope." Lila reached out suddenly and took the queen's hand. "You don't have to be sad anymore," she said in her small, clear voice. "You can be my friend." The queen froze. No one had ever touched her like that before, not since her daughter's death. She looked down at the tiny hand holding hers, and something inside her heart stirred, something she thought had died long ago. A faint smile touched her lips. "Your heart is strong, little one. Stronger than mine, I think." The meeting went on for a long time. The queen asked about Earth, about human life, about how Ethan managed to raise a child alone in such a harsh place. Ethan answered carefully but honestly. He told her that humans might be small compared to her kind, but they survived because they cared for each other. The queen listened in silence, her expression unreadable. When he finished, she said, "You speak with humility, and yet there is strength in your words. I have seen empires fall for lack of that simple care." As they stood to leave, the queen placed her hand lightly on Lila's shoulder. "Would you visit me again?" she asked softly. Lila nodded eagerly. "Yes. Can I bring my drawing things next time?" "Of course," the queen said, her voice almost tender. When they returned to their small room, Ethan felt both relieved and uneasy. The queen had been kind, but there was something more in her eyes, something like obsession or grief too deep to heal. Lila talked happily about the visit, describing every shiny wall and floating light. Ethan listened, smiling, but inside he was afraid. He didn't know why the queen cared so much or what she really wanted from them. Over the next few days the queen called for them often. Each time Lila would run ahead, laughing and talking as if she belonged there. The queen watched her closely, always smiling but never without that sadness behind her eyes. One day when Ethan was waiting outside the throne room, he overheard two of the queen's advisors whispering. "She's lost her reason," one said. "She sees ghosts in the human child. The council will not allow this." "The council?" Ethan whispered to himself. The words chilled him. He had heard rumors that the Council of Viral had the power to overrule even the queen if they thought she was unfit to rule. When the meeting ended, the queen stepped out and Ethan noticed the strain on her face. She smiled at Lila but said nothing about what had been discussed. Instead, she invited them to walk with her through the observation garden, where alien plants glowed faintly in the air. As they walked, Lila pointed to the stars. "They're beautiful," she said. The queen followed her gaze. "My people used to believe the stars were our ancestors watching us. I used to believe it too." Ethan asked quietly, "And now?" The queen's voice was barely a whisper. "Now I think they are waiting for something, or someone." Lila looked up and said, "Maybe they're waiting for you to smile again." The queen stopped walking. Her throat tightened, and her eyes shimmered with colors that shifted like a sunset. For the first time in years she laughed, a soft, broken sound but real. That night, as Ethan tucked Lila into bed, he looked out at the stars beyond the station window. Something had changed. The queen had not just remembered her daughter, she had found a piece of her again in his child. And though Ethan didn't understand the full meaning of it yet, he knew that memory, especially a queen's memory, was a powerful thing. It could move empires. It could start wars. Or maybe it could heal them. But it never stayed quiet for long. Ethan began to notice changes on Viral Station in the days after the queen's meetings with him and Lila. The corridors felt colder, the guards looked more tense, and whispers followed him wherever he went. Even the workers who used to nod politely now avoided his eyes. Something was building, something unseen but heavy in the air. The queen still called for them almost every day. Lila would sit beside her on a grand crystal seat, drawing pictures or asking innocent questions about the stars. The queen always smiled, answering softly, her voice carrying a warmth no one on the station had heard from her in years. But Ethan could sense that others didn't like it. Her advisors always stood nearby, watching silently, their faces tight with disapproval. One afternoon after their visit, Ethan overheard two counselors talking in the outer hall. They spoke in sharp tones, but he caught enough to understand. "She grows weaker by the day," one hissed. "She risks everything for that human child." "The council will not stand for this," the other replied. "The queen's mind has clouded. If she will not listen, we must act." Ethan's stomach dropped. He didn't fully understand their politics, but he knew a threat when he heard one. He took Lila's hand and hurried her back to their quarters. That night, as the station's artificial lights dimmed, he sat awake, staring at the ceiling. His thoughts were tangled between fear and confusion. He wondered why this was happening to them. He was just a janitor. His daughter was just a child. And yet somehow, they were now at the center of something far beyond their reach. The next day when they entered the queen's chamber, the mood was different. The queen's expression was cold, her eyes dim. The air seemed heavier. Ethan bowed, sensing something was wrong. "You heard them, didn't you?" she asked quietly, not looking at him. Ethan froze. "Your Majesty, I..." She turned her gaze toward him, calm but sharp. "Do not deny it. The council speaks louder than they think." She stood and walked slowly toward the great window, where the light of a distant star bathed her in gold. "They say I am losing my reason. That my affection for your daughter is a weakness." Ethan swallowed hard. "I didn't mean to cause trouble. We can leave if that's what you want." The queen turned sharply. No. You will not leave. If you go they will find you. And if they find you they will take her. Lila, who had been sitting quietly, looked up. Who will take me? The queen's expression softened. She knelt beside the child. No one will take you, little one. I promise you that. Then, more quietly, she added, even if it costs me everything. Over the next few days rumors spread faster. People said the queen had lost her sense of duty. Others said she had gone mad with grief. There were whispers that the council was gathering a fleet near the station, preparing to remove her from power. Ethan noticed the guards changing too. Some who had once stood loyally by the queen now avoided eye contact. Others had been replaced entirely by new faces, hard, silent men who watched everything. One evening, while repairing a ventilation system near the command levels, Ethan heard footsteps behind him. A voice said, "Human." He turned quickly. A tall figure stood there, dressed in the silver armor of the Royal Guard. "The council requests your cooperation," the man said coldly. "For the safety of the station." Ethan's heart pounded. "What do you want from me?" "Nothing. Only the child." Ethan's hands tightened around his wrench. "You're not touching her." The guard tilted his head slightly, studying him. "You think your small body can protect her from us? From the council?" "I don't care who you are," Ethan said quietly. "She's my daughter." The guard's eyes narrowed. "Then you will die for her." Before he could react, the sound of heavy boots echoed down the corridor. The queen's personal guards appeared, surrounding the soldier. Their captain spoke sharply, "This man is under Her Majesty's protection." The guard sneered but said nothing. He turned and left, his steps echoing through the hall. That night, the queen summoned Ethan to her private chambers alone. She looked tired, her usual grace dulled by worry. "They move faster than I hoped," she said quietly. "They will come soon. They believe that by taking the child they can break me." Ethan sat down heavily. "Then what can we do?" The queen looked at him with eyes that glowed faintly, like fading embers. "We prepare." The next morning, the queen called an emergency gathering in the Grand Hall. Council members, guards, and citizens of the upper decks filled the room. Ethan and Lila stood to the side, hidden behind a line of soldiers. The queen's voice echoed through the hall. "You speak of duty," she said, her tone like thunder. "You speak of order. But what is an empire that has forgotten compassion? What strength is there in hearts made of stone?" One of the counselors stepped forward. "You risk everything for a human child, Majesty. You would trade your throne for sentiment." The queen stared down at him. "Perhaps. For what is a throne worth, if the heart that sits upon it is dead?" Gasps rippled through the chamber. The counselor's face twisted with fury. "Then you are unfit to rule," he shouted. The queen lifted her chin. "Then come and take my crown." The room erupted into chaos. Guards moved in, weapons drawn. The queen's loyal soldiers surrounded her. Ethan grabbed Lila's hand and pulled her behind a column. Blaster fire filled the air, flashes of blue and gold lighting the crystal walls. The queen moved like lightning, her power surging through the room. She lifted her hands and a wave of energy burst outward, knocking the traitorous guards to the ground. Her eyes blazed with color. "You forget who I am," she said, her voice low and fierce. But even she could not fight forever. There were too many of them. The council's fleet outside had already begun locking weapons on the station. Ethan held Lila close, whispering, "We have to go. Now." The queen turned to them, her expression soft again even in the chaos. "No. Stay. Trust me." The floor trembled as explosions shook the station. Alarms blared. The queen raised her arms once more, creating a shimmering barrier that shielded them from debris. She looked back at Ethan, her voice barely audible over the noise. "They think love makes me weak," she said. "They are wrong." Outside, through the shattered windows of the hall, the light of hundreds of ships burned in the dark. The council's war had begun. And at its heart stood a queen, a janitor, and a small human child who had somehow become the center of everything. Ethan held Lila tightly as the queen faced the storm of her own people. In that moment he understood, this was no longer about power or thrones. It was about something far older and deeper. It was about love defying fear. And the universe, vast and watching, seemed to hold its breath. The storm began not with thunder but with silence. Viral Station floated above a dying world, its glowing rings usually bright with trade ships and lights from 1,000 windows. But now the corridors were dark. The outer decks had been sealed off. And the air carried a quiet tension, like a deep breath before a scream. Ethan stood by the small viewport in his quarters, staring at the massive fleet forming beyond the station's shields. Rows of council ships, dark and sharp, like a wall of iron teeth. Lila sat on the floor beside him, drawing shapes with a broken stylus. She was too young to understand but old enough to feel that something was wrong. "When can we go outside again?" she asked softly. Ethan looked down at her and forced a small smile. "Soon, sweetheart. When the storm passes." He didn't tell her that this storm wouldn't pass easily. Moments later the door opened. A tall figure in silver armor stepped inside, Captain Reese, one of the Queen's few remaining loyal guards. His face was pale and hard. "She asks for you both," he said. "Now." Ethan felt his stomach tighten. "Is it starting?" Reese nodded once. "They've sent an ultimatum. The council demands the child." Ethan froze. "They can't have her." Reese looked down. "The Queen said you'd say that." He led them through the dim corridors. Soldiers lined the walls, their weapons ready. The sound of distant engines rumbled like faraway thunder. When they entered the royal chamber, the Queen stood before the great window, her long dark cloak rippling as the lights from the fleet flashed across the glass. Her eyes glowed faintly, like embers trying not to die. "They've surrounded us," she said quietly. "I gave them one chance to withdraw. They refused." Lila ran to her, unafraid. "Are they the bad people?" The Queen knelt and brushed a strand of hair from the child's face. "They are lost people, little one. They've forgotten what matters." Ethan stepped forward. "There has to be another way. You don't have to fight them." The Queen turned to him, her expression unreadable. "You think I want war? Every part of me longs for peace. But if they take her, Ethan, they will break her. They will study her, twist her, and call it science." Ethan's throat felt dry. "Then we fight," he said quietly. For the first time, a small smile touched her lips. "Spoken like one of my own." The chamber's walls shook as a distant explosion echoed through the station. "The first strike." Reese drew his weapon. "Shields are down on the western ring. They're boarding." The Queen straightened, her eyes burning brighter. "Then we hold the core. No one reaches the child." The next hour blurred into chaos. Ethan carried Lila through smoke-filled corridors as alarms wailed. The air reeked of metal and ozone. Soldiers ran past, shouting orders. The floor trembled under their feet. They reached a service tunnel where the Queen waited with a handful of guards. She looked fierce and radiant, her cloak torn, her crown gone. "The council will not stop," she said. "We must get you both to the lower hangars." "But what about you?" Ethan asked. "I will buy you time." Lila clung to her. "No. Don't go." The Queen smiled sadly. "You gave me something I thought I had lost forever," she said. "Hope. Let me give you a future in return." Before Ethan could protest, Reese pulled him forward. "Move." The tunnel shook again as another explosion tore through the upper decks. Dust and sparks rained from the ceiling. Ethan held Lila close and ran. Behind them, the Queen raised her hands, and a wave of light burst down the corridor, sealing the path with a wall of shimmering energy. They reached the hangar just as a blast door opened, revealing a small transport ship. Reese turned to Ethan. "Take her. Get her away from here." Ethan hesitated. "What about you?" Reese gave a thin smile. "My place is here. With her." Ethan nodded. There was no time for words. He climbed into the ship, securing Lila in the seat beside him. The engines whined to life. As the doors began to close, Lila looked back toward the tunnel. "She's coming, right?" Ethan didn't answer. He couldn't. Out in space, the storm had broken fully. Hundreds of ships filled the dark, exchanging fire in blinding bursts. The Queen's flagship burned with gold light, her power glowing through the cracks in the hull. Even from the cockpit, Ethan could see it. He felt it too, the strange low hum of something ancient and alive. The Queen's energy rippled across the void like a heartbeat. And then, for a moment, the enemy ships faltered. A massive voice echoed across the comms, deep and heavy with sorrow. "You bring war to the house that gave you peace." It was the Queen. Her voice filled the stars. The Council's fleet replied with a volley of fire. Beams of blue light struck her ship, tearing it apart piece by piece. But the Queen didn't fall quietly. She lifted her arms, and from her palms poured a storm of radiant light, sweeping across the enemy line. For a moment, it looked as if the heavens themselves were burning. Ethan's ship shook as the wave passed by, harmless yet powerful enough to make his chest ache. When the light faded, half the Council's fleet drifted silent and dark. But the Queen's flagship was breaking apart. Ethan gripped the controls, staring at the screen as alarms screamed around him. Hold on, Lila, he whispered. We're almost out. A voice crackled through the comms, soft, weak but clear. Ethan. He froze. Your Majesty? Take her far from here, the Queen said. Promise me. I promise, he whispered. Good. Then my heart can rest. The line went silent. A moment later, a burst of light erupted where the Queen's ship had been. Not an explosion but a bloom of gold that spread across the stars like sunrise. Every weapon stopped firing. Every ship went still. Then just as quickly it was gone. Ethan and Lila drifted in the quiet afterward, their small ships sailing through the wreckage and glowing dust. The battle was over. Lila pressed her face against the window. Look, Daddy, she said softly. It's beautiful. Ethan couldn't speak. The light shimmered like 1,000 falling stars, and in it, for a brief moment, he thought he saw her. The Queen. Smiling. He whispered, Yeah, it is. The ship's engines flared, turning away from the silent station. Behind them, Viral hung in the distance, wrapped in the soft gold of a storm that had ended not with destruction, but with peace. And as they flew into the quiet dark, Ethan realized something. The Queen hadn't just fought for them, she had changed the galaxy's heart. The war had ended. But the memory of the Queen's light would never fade. It would live on, carried in the eyes of a little girl with hope brighter than the stars. The storm over Viral was gone. But its echo, her legacy, was only beginning. The small transport ship drifted through the dark, quiet space for days. The storms of battle were long gone, but the silence that followed felt heavier than any explosion. Ethan guided the ship with tired hands, his eyes fixed on the faint light of distant stars. Lila slept beside him, curled under a thin blanket. Every so often she would mumble something in her dreams. A name, a sound, maybe a word she had learned from the Queen. Ethan couldn't tell. He hadn't spoken much since the battle. His thoughts were stuck on the Queen's final words. Take her far from here. That promise echoed in his mind again and again. He had kept it. But keeping it didn't stop his heart from feeling like a hollow shell. When the ship finally entered the orbit of a quiet moon, Ethan landed near the edge of a frozen forest. He built a small shelter using what was left of the supplies. The moon's sky was pale green, the air thin but breathable. It was peaceful, safe enough for Lila to play again, to laugh again. For the first few days Ethan tried to build a new life. He fixed the radio, hunted small creatures for food, and taught Lila how to use the stars to find their way. But even as the days grew longer, there was something strange about the place. Sometimes at night, the air shimmered with golden light, faint and warm like a heartbeat. And when the wind blew across the trees, Ethan could swear he heard a soft voice whisper his name. One evening, while Lila was drawing on the ground with a stick, she suddenly looked up and said, "Daddy, she's here." Ethan turned quickly, his pulse racing. "Who's here?" "The Queen," Lila said, smiling in a calm, dreamy way. "She said she missed me." Ethan froze. He wanted to ask more, but before he could, the air in front of them shimmered. A wave of golden light rolled through the clearing. The trees bent gently as if bowing to something unseen. Then she appeared. Not in full form, but as a figure of light, tall, graceful, with soft golden eyes that glowed like the dawn. The Queen looked at them both, her expression kind and sad. "Do not be afraid," she said. Her voice wasn't just sound, it felt like it was speaking inside their hearts. Ethan stood slowly. "Your Majesty, I thought that I was gone," she finished for him. "I am. At least in the way you knew me. My body is gone, but what I was, my spirit, my flame, remains." Lila stepped forward without fear. "You're not sad anymore," she said. The Queen smiled softly. "No, little one. You helped me remember love. You helped me find peace." Ethan's throat tightened. "You gave your life for us." "I gave my life for hope," she replied. "And that hope is standing right here." She looked at Lila. "Her heart carries light that no council or army can destroy. She will be the bridge between our kinds." Ethan glanced down at his daughter. "She's just a child." The Queen's voice became gentle. "So was my daughter once." She reached out a hand of golden light, and a soft spark flowed from her palm into Lila's chest. The child gasped softly, her eyes glowing for a brief moment with the same golden hue. "What did you do?" Ethan asked, stepping closer. "I gave her a part of me," said the Queen. "My gift to your world, and to hers. Through her, my people will know kindness again. Through her, yours will learn what it means to forgive." Ethan shook his head, struggling to understand. "She's just human. She can't." The Queen looked at him and her voice became firm. You still don't see it, do you? It wasn't her eyes that made her special. It was her heart. She looked at me and saw not a monster, not a queen, but a mother who missed her child. That is power beyond all crowns. For a long moment the air was still. The light around the queen flickered like candle flame in the wind. Your world will change, Ethan Miles, she said softly. But promise me something. Anything. When the time comes and others come seeking her light, do not hide her. Let her shine. Ethan nodded, though his heart ached. I promise. The queen smiled faintly, and for the first time, there was no sorrow in her eyes. Then my journey ends here. The golden light around her began to fade. Lila reached out, tears welling in her eyes. Don't go. The queen knelt down, her voice barely a whisper. I never truly leave, child. Whenever you look at the stars, I will be there. And with that she was gone. The light dissolved into the air like gentle dust, leaving only a faint warmth behind. For a while neither Ethan nor Lila spoke. The wind was soft. The stars above shimmered in silence. Then Lila looked up and said, Daddy, do you think she's happy now? Ethan smiled weakly. Yes, I think she finally is. Years passed. The moon became their home. Lila grew stronger, wiser. Her eyes, once simple brown, carried a faint golden ring now, especially when she was calm or dreaming. And sometimes when she sang to herself, the air around her seemed to shimmer. One day a ship appeared in the sky, sleek in silver, bearing no markings of war. It landed near their camp, and from it stepped creatures from many races, human, Varelian, and others Ethan had never seen before. At their head was a tall man in white armor. We come in peace, he said. We've been searching for the child born of both light and flesh. Ethan looked at Lila. She stood tall beside him, unafraid. Her golden eyes glowed faintly in the moonlight. I'm here, she said. The man bowed. The council has fallen. The new worlds wish to build what was lost. And they believe you can guide them. Lila smiled softly. Then let's build something beautiful. Ethan watched her step forward, his heart full of pride and sadness. She turned to him one last time. You'll come with me, won't you? Always, he said. As the ship lifted into the stars, Ethan felt warmth again, a gentle hum deep in his chest. It was the same feeling he had felt the day the queen gave her life for them. He looked at Lila and realized what the queen's gift truly was. It wasn't just power. It was connection, the bond between two hearts that had seen war and chosen love instead. And as the ship rose toward the starlit sky, Ethan whispered to himself, the gift of the queen lives on. Far away in the shimmer of the stars, something golden flickered, like a smile in the endless dark. It was the light of peace, and it would never fade.